reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. That very day, the first day of the week, 2 of Jesus' disciples were going to a village 7 miles from Jerusalem called Emmaus, and they were conversing about all the things that had occurred. And it happened that while they were conversing and debating, Jesus himself drew near and walked with them, but their eyes were prevented from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing as you walk along?" They stopped, looking downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, said to him in reply, "Are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who does not know of the things that have taken place there in these days?" And he replied to them, "What sort of things?" They said to him, "The things that have happened to Jesus the Nazarene, who was a prophet mighty in deed and in word before God and all the people. How our chief priests and rulers both handed him over to a sentence of death and crucified him. But we were hoping that he would be the one to redeem Israel. And besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since all of this has taken place." Some women within our group, however, have astounded us. They were at the tomb early in the morning and did not find his body. They came back and reported that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who announced that he was alive. Then some of those with us went to the tomb and found things just as the women had described, but they did not see. And he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are! How slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken! Was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them with what referred to him in all of the scriptures. As they approached the village to which they were going, he gave him the impression that he was going farther. But they urged him, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening, and the day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. And it happened, while he was with them at table, he took the bread, said the blessing, broke it, gave it to them. With that, their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. Then they said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he spoke to us on the way and opened the scriptures to us?" So they set out at once and returned to Jerusalem, where they found gathered together the 11 and those with them who were saying, "The Lord has been truly raised and has appeared to Simon." Then the 2 recounted what had taken place on the way and how he had made known to them in the breaking of the bread. The Gospel of the Lord.
My dear friends, we continue our Mercy Novena, and today we have from the Gospel of St. Luke that gorgeous story of the road to Emmaus. We should be very open to putting ourselves into this story, as with any gospel story, any scriptural text, to put ourselves into the place of a character and allow the scriptures to live anew through us. These 2 disciples were going away from Jerusalem. They thought it was all done. Their hands were clean. He's dead. The one we followed for years, the one we placed our hope in, the one we thought was the font of mercy, is dead. Can you imagine the sense of defeat? Could you imagine that sense of literal emptiness, that void? Maybe you've experienced that during this time of enclosure, this time of staying at home during this pandemic. Maybe there have been moments of complete and utter hopelessness, of finding our life lacking meaning. Whether we're in good company with these disciples, and as they were conversing and debating on what hadn't happened, and possibly their own foolishness for following this guy with their whole heart, putting it all in to get nothing back, Jesus appears. They don't recognize him. They're so wrapped up in their own worry and their own void that Jesus comes in and starts to make them look up. They were doing what's called navel gazing, looking down, saying, my life is ruined, my life is over, my hope is gone, Jesus is gone, who am I now? Who was he? Did he lie to me? So wrapped up in all of that, Jesus is calling them to look up, asking them, what are you talking about? And they say, don't you know? Don't you know? Are you deaf? Are you daft? Are you living under a rock? And he says, no, what kind of things are you talking about? They lift their heads up to share the story and share their worry and share their fear and share their hopelessness, share their anger, share their broken hearts. And what does Jesus do? He pierces that all again. He pierces all of that and even says strongly, oh, how foolish you are. Don't you believe? How slow of heart you are. All the prophets spoke of this. And sometimes Jesus Christ needs to use that strong language with me and with all of us. How foolish we can be. So many of us baptized and raised in the church, and even those of us who have come to the church later in life, we could be so foolish and hard-hearted. We could have come to Mass every day for years, and then this struggle comes, this Calvary moment comes, and we crumble. We're asking, where are you, Jesus? How are you? What's going on? Did I waste my life? Jesus needs to come in and say, wake up. Are you so hard-hearted that you don't believe? Let me tell you again. Was it not necessary for the Christ to suffer these things and enter into his glory? And Christ, with these two disciples, opened the scriptures. He literally opened their hearts, starting with Moses, going through all of the Old Testament to the glory of who he is. I am who am. And because of that, as he was going to move forward, they said, no, stay with us. We want more. We're interested now. We're looking up. We want more of what you're giving us. But when were their eyes really opened? When he broke the bread. He broke the bread and disappeared. Why? Because he was there, sacramentally present. It's not like Jesus disappeared at that moment and he wasn't present. No, he was there in that transformed bread, his body. Remember the Last Supper. This is my body given up for you. This is my blood, the blood of the new covenant. When we come to Mass, we are really receiving Jesus Christ, the King of mercy himself, to open our eyes. Perhaps this time of pandemic is the time to reflect on how we see the gift of Jesus in the Eucharist, the bread of life. When we come to receive him with faith, with trust. Are we ever going to fully understand it? No, we're not meant to on this side of the veil. But what does mercy say? Mercy says, trust in me. I love you. I'm with you. I wouldn't lie to you. Mercy doesn't lie. Jesus Christ doesn't lie. He's with us in these sacraments. He's with us when the bread is broken, the wine is poured out, his body and blood. For he disappeared, and the disciples' eyes were opened, and they say, were not our hearts burning within us? When we're allowed to come back to church, may our hearts burn and burst within us with the truth of who we are as a pilgrim people, as Catholic Christians, as people of faith, as a universal church. May we not go back to our old ways of just coming to church out of obligation, receiving our Jesus, and leaving with the same worries and fears and fighting like cats and dogs in the parking lot. No. We're worth more. Christ is worth more than to give him second or third place in our hearts. Because what does those disciples do after they experienced Jesus in the gospel again? They went. They went to Jerusalem again and recounted what had taken way, recounted what had taken place on that way, and how Jesus was known to them in the breaking of the bread. He's still known to us in the breaking of the bread today. May we not take him for granted. He doesn't take us for granted. That's not meant to be guilt, it's truth. He's always with us. Let's not forget him, my friends, for he is risen. Alleluia.
Give me mercy, oh